What was the final breaking point?
Yeah.
What was
Yes.
the final breaking point?
The final breaking point is that when I had found out about this, when I found out about the second affair in 2000, in October of 2017, conciliate. I tried my best. I said, I had tried times. Can we please go get counseling or go see, our pastor and talk to them and get counseling? No, no, no. No one needs to know our relationship. What's just God. Only God knows what's going on with us. And finally, I said to him, business owner, I said, he stopped going to church. We stopped going to church because we're doing things for the business. And I said to him, well, it's been a year now. We're why do we have to work on Sundays? Why can't we go to church? And so he's like, well, finally, he's like, well, if you can go. So I finally started going back to church. I talked to one of the pastors and his wife about what was going on, and I went to them. I didn't go blaming him, pointing the fingers at my husband. Then I said to them, I said, what am I doing wrong? I wanted to know what I'm doing wrong in our marriage. And they said, you're not doing anything wrong. You're here doing what you need to do. You're asking for help. You're being here in church.
Yeah.
You're doing what you need to do. And at that time, the whole marriage and relationship, I didn't know anything about narcissism. It was never, I never even looked, I never even really, I don't think I even heard the word
Yeah.
until, like I said, my relationship with God after he left. Narcissism popped up in my YouTube feed. I'm like, well, what is this? This is weird. I've never seen it. I'm like, I just put it to the wayside. And then again, he was coming and going. He came back twice, and then he finally left in March of 2018. But again, in December 2018, after he had left the second time, that same narcissistic, abuse had popped up in my YouTube feed. And I was just very curious. Why am I seeing this? What's this all
Yeah.
about? So I started listening and watching it, and I was just, my mind was blown away. I'm like, wow, this is my husband. I knew something was wrong the whole time, but I just never knew what it was. I could never put my finger on it. It was a constant roller coaster, silent treatment. Was never good enough.
Yeah.
I always helped him with what he needed, but he was never there to reciprocate. He acted like I was a burden. Every time it was always walking on eggshells, and it finally came to the point in the end. Whenever he would come home and I would be in the kitchen, and I'd hear the keys in the door, I would freeze, and I
Yeah.
would turn and look at him, and I would read his face. And when I read his face, that would tell me how the rest of my evening was going to go.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it was the silent treatment. And years of silent treatment did a lot to myself, made me feel invaluable, and you know what am I doing to stay, or why is it wrong, or what could I have said or done better to please him?
Yeah.
And it was just never enough.
Yeah. How did
But
you feel once you realized that it wasn't
yeah,
you,
some
it was
of the breaking
actually
point
him?
was when sorry, we got on a sidetrack. But,
No, that's okay. Go ahead. The breaking point.
well, at first, it was a hard time. It took a long time to accept. Oh, sorry, yeah. So my breaking point is when he had told me, we had tried to work it out the second time when I found out about the affair, and it wasn't him who told me about it. It was an anonymous person who texted me, telling me that you needed to text this woman because that is your husband's girlfriend. And when I went to text this person that I was, the number that I was given, I didn't really get a response. She spoke another language. You could tell she had broken English, and then she stopped responding to me. And finally, my husband at the time had called me, chewing me out. Hey, what are you doing talking to people you don't know? I'm like, well, this person told me, someone told me that this is your girlfriend, and I should contact her, and I want to know what's going on. I feel like I should know the facts before I talk to you. And he just chewed me out, and was scolding me and made me feel terrible. But the breaking point was when he had told me that we tried to work on it, we tried to reconcile, humiliate, I guess. But apparently, his phone, I could, in my face, he told me, it's over, it's over. We're done. And then we tried to work on our marriage. But he was still having an affair, from what I found out from my son. And my son was at 11 at the time. And he went to visit his father. And he told me that, oh, my dad, I learned a couple of new things about my dad. He's drinking. He'd never seen his dad drinking. He's drinking and driving. And he had a girlfriend. I'm like, oh, well, what's her name? He told me, the mistress. And so that time, so I told him, if you're walking on our relationship, on our marriage, you need to be the one to file for divorce. And he didn't do it. And then he said, oh, and then I asked him about it. He said, oh, well, you'll have your papers in a month. And I never received them. So I asked him again, where are my papers? Oh, well, he didn't do it. I said, well, I had felt in my spirit that God was telling me that, he's not going to do it. You just need to be the one to do it. You didn't, it was all him. I didn't know it was all him, but I just felt God telling me that you need to do this. And so I just took that leap of faith, told my ex, I said, well, if you're walking out on our marriage, and in your family, you need divorce while you have a mistress. So I went ahead and, took that leap of faith and went and filed for divorce. I was a homeschooling mom. I had no money, no income, no way to. And so that's, that was the beginning of, a new start of a new chapter. And it was almost a 2.5 year battle in court. He's the one who walked out on the marriage, but yet he kept dragging on divorce, costing me, we lost our marital home. We had to sell our marital home, and I was, temporarily, misplaced with my mother and my son. And then, I sold the house, and I had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on attorney's fees because he kept dragging on the divorce. And finally, it came to a point where I was so mentally exhausted that my attorney wasn't working for me. She seemed to be working against me with his attorney. And I had decided that, she wasn't listening to me. She didn't have, our best interest, that I had to fire her and had to finish the rest of our court hearing alone. And I made sure that I, prepared myself adequately, the best that I could, under the circumstances and under the stress. And we were able to come to an agreement. He reluctantly signed, but we went ahead and, March of 2020, I reminded him that, hey, you did this and you did that. And because you did, A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, this is what I need you to do for our son. And I wasn't asking anything for myself. I was just asking, specifically for our son. Because, it wasn't about us anymore. It was just about, supporting our son and having the best interest for him. So, I think I lost you, Sabrina. I think I'll have to cancel and reconnect with you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sabrina, hi there. I lost each other.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, good. So you had said that you didn't find out about narcissism
I can hear
until.
You, yeah.
Awesome. So you said you didn't find out about narcissism until after the relationship.
Yeah, until after it ended, yes, absolutely.
How did you feel?
So once, I started watching that YouTube. Again.
How did you feel once you figured that out?
A poor connection. Oh wow. It definitely shocked me, but it also made me realize that everything that I sensed was off was really, was 100 with narcissism. It was on point. Um, and I just couldn't believe it that all those years that I was under, his control, and I love this so much, and really wanted to build, a future with him, and he had no plans to build with me, and just to, to abuse and steal, and it was only for his best interest and not ours. But I started, studying about narcissism, watching more YouTube videos, reading books. I had a friend of mine I met through homeschooling. Was starting to go through a divorce too, and we became really good friends. We were there to support each other. Our sons went to the same homeschooling classes that were there, programs that they had there, and we built a really good friendship together. And we're still friends. Excuse me. We're still friends, and we plan to. Oh, excuse me. Like a tickle in my throat. We plan to write a book together, a side-by-side book. Oh, excuse me. We plan to, write a side-by-side book together, telling our story of what we went through. Excuse me.
In that book, are you planning on talking about some of the red flags that?
Yes, definitely. He was very, he had a lot of, silent treatment. That was his biggest form of abuse, was the silent treatment, the gaslighting. He would say things to confuse me and get me off track, and get, take the focus off of him. If I had something that I had disagreed with him about, he would use a lot of different. I would always have to ask him, can you repeat that to me, because I don't quite understand what you're trying to say. And he was always, like intentionally trying to confuse me. And so it was like a lot of, the emotional, the financial, the gaslighting, the projection. I learned that, the projection was that it's basically an admission of his own guilt. He would accuse me of the things that he was doing. But, and that projection is basically they're admitting to their own, their own wrong deeds, and they're trying to put it, pass it onto you. He was a passive aggressive bully, covert. If I were to tell anyone that knew him that he was a covert narcissist, they would think that I was absolutely crazy and I was just a bitter ex-wife. Yeah. But he, again, it's his public image that he tries to protect. He's one way in public and a whole nother person behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And he had his family believing that I was the one in the wrong, because I'm the one who filed for divorce. So because I look like I filed for divorce, but they probably don't know the backstory to that. So yeah, I got really involved, really in, learning a lot, watching YouTube videos, reading a lot of different books. Like one of my favorite books is Divorcing a Narcissist, One Mom's Battle. That book really resonated with me because I could relate to a lot of the things that she went through, especially through divorce, because it was, the monster really came out during divorce. His true colors really came out.
I bet.
And I also read books on boundaries. I learned that I didn't have a friend of mine gave me this book years ago, and I never really finished it. But during the divorce, I started, just wanting to, improve on myself, and because I don't want to go through this. Something was wrong with me, obviously, to allow all of that to happen. And I believe it was because I had a lack of boundaries. I was never taught boundaries. not to have strong boundaries. And I've learned that you definitely have to have boundaries and set limits and expectations. And if it doesn't fall, if people don't respect that, then you have to stand your ground and push back where it's good, or learn to be able to have some sort of compromise, but not always be the one compromising.
Yeah, definitely.
So
100%.
yeah,
Can you
I did a lot of studying of everything. So go ahead.
can you talk about when you and I had talked previously, you had mentioned in court how you really felt as if you had to and got to stand in your power. Can you talk a little bit about that, about court?
Right. Sure. Basically, because sorry. So basically, I had to fire my attorney, so I felt like my back was against the wall, and I was just so mentally exhausted, completely mentally exhausted. I almost had a mental breakdown right before that court date, March. I think it was March 4th, 2020. So I just went there without an attorney. I just made sure that I had all the documentation, all the facts in place. And we had to sit there together and talk about, okay, who's going to get what are we going to do? And I went in there just basically telling him, hey, I said, I learned, this is what you did. This is what I learned that you did. And because you did A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, I need you to do this for our son. I gave up, my rights to the family business. I allowed him to have his brand new car. I walked 106 gallons because he kept me home and didn't want me to work. And it came down to time to paying it, he asked me, well, why are they using my income? And I said, it's because we're married and I don't have a job and we've got to pay them back somehow. So that's when he decided to really, finally leave and, not have any sort of accountability and, my student loan debt. So I walked away with, all this debt. But I mean, I couldn't get back my premarital down payment on the house. It was my 401k and childhood saving bonds that he asked me to cash out.
Wow.
To put down on the house. I wasn't able to get that back. Even though I had proof and I didn't have an attorney anymore, I was not able to get that back. But I did, ask him. I said, well, if I can't at least get that, can you at least, be responsible for all medical, dental, all, anything associated to orthodontics and braces? And he reluctantly agreed. But, he walked away with pretty much, washing, with no responsibility.
Yeah.
But I did stand up to him and tell him, I said, you did A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And that's just had to do. Even if he disagreed, I felt like I had to do it because I was standing up for our son. I wanted, it was all about our son. It was not about us anymore. And it was about the best interest in our son. And, because I don't have a job, how am I going to be able to do these things? So therefore, you're the business owner. You have all the money. I need you to do this. Can you please, can you please do this? And he, again, reluctantly disagreed. But I just said, this is what you're gonna do. He signed it. That the judges agreed on it, but it took a long time to find, to get the, even though we agreed on it, it took a long time to finally get our divorce decree. But in August of 2020, I finally was divorced, and that was a great, from the day of being in court, the very last day in court with him, telling him that you're going to do this because you did all these things, and then, I endured. I never gave up. I kept pushing, even though I was exhausted, even though I didn't think I could going forward. But I had a very good, support system backing me, my family and my friends. They were really there. They saw how hard they knew what kind of person I was. They knew what kind of, it wasn't right what he had done, and they were there to support me because this was not right. And one person can only handle so much. So when I was weak, they were strong and kept encouraging me, and I just kept going, one day at a time. Eventually, there's going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. And once that day on March 4th, 2020, in court, when you're going to, that's when I felt so powerful and victorious. And from that day forward, I was just really proud of myself that I never threw in the towel, and I kept it moving, kept the momentum going, because our son, was my driving force. And plus, I have a older daughter and a granddaughter, and I've got to be an example for them. When life gives you lemons, you just got to make the best out of it and do what you can do. So that's that day in court, telling him what to do and not backing down. And I just had to try. I had to give it a shot. And that's what I did.
Exactly. For women who are out there potentially living with individuals with narcissistic traits, can you kind of list out some of the ones that you dealt with?
Oh, well, definitely the silent treatment, uh, cheating. They're pathological liars. The projection, the gaslighting. What else is there? Control. Let's see what else.
Do you have any examples?
Mainly, as far as my circle.
Do you have any examples of gaslighting?
I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
Do you have any examples of gaslighting?
Let me see. Gaslighting. Let me think. Well, if I understand the term correctly, was trying to bring in something that he had done wrong or that I disagreed with. He would, how do I explain it? At this very moment, it's hard. But gaslighting is just I think it's just basically I would tell him something wrong, but then he would turn it around and try to flip.
Yeah.
The situation. So basically, he would distract me with something else, or he would say something about myself to attack my character, to get me to totally, completely forget what he was trying to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted you to say that was because individuals who are just now learning about narcissism, or who have maybe never heard of it before but are listening to this, they don't know what the term means. So, but they know what's being done to them. So now that you explained it, they can look at that and they can say, wow, that's happening to me. He is now I know he's been gaslighting me, which is a really big attribute that narcissists use in order to control their partners or victims, or however you want to put that. Do you have any books? You mentioned some books. So obnoxious. Do you have any books?
Well,
you mentioned a couple.
Yeah, one of the books. Yes. So, the book that really resonated with me was divorcing. I'm sorry. It's One About Divorcing a Narcissist. That really resonated with me because of the incidents that happened to her while in court. He kept, he had her husband had affairs, yet, they were going to the divorce, and he was dragging it on, causing, trying to wear her down, financially, emotionally, psychologically. That was one that, that happened to me. Like I said, I almost had a breakdown in March. But that was one. That was a really good one. Another one that it's called Prepared to be Tortured. It's called Prepared to be Tortured, The Price You Will Pay for Dating a Narcissist. It's basically, it takes out, it gives you a lot of examples of narcissists, like the types of narcissists, kind of like how to recognize them, not just a person that you're married to or dating, but it could be a family member, a coworker. That's a good one. And another one that I read, it was about exposing financial abuse. And the reason why I got this was because I learned, through my divorce, and that he had financially abused us. He was controlling all the money. He was spending all the money. He was hiding money. I didn't have access to our, login for the bank accounts. He would not allow me to have it. He said, this is a blessing for me to do this for you, because, I wasn't so great with my finances before when I first met him, but he used that. So he used that against me to say, oh, this is a blessing for me to do our finances, and everything was being paid. So everything was being paid. So I never even questioned that he was doing anything wrong or being secretive. So that was a really good book. And then again, Boundaries, this book here, Boundaries, by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. This was a really good book for establishing, learning where my boundaries were weak and how to make them stronger. And you have to apply it, and you have to practice it. You're not going to get it, right off the bat. But the more you use it, the more comfortable you'll get, and then it'll become second nature to you. So those are the three main books that I read that really helped me, through this journey that I've been through.
100%.